Hello, welcome to Examining Fictional Heroes and the Authors Behind Them. Tonight we are going to continue with the Gordon story, Sons of the Hawk. Dawn streaming grayly through the barred window awakened Brent. He reflected that it might be his last dawn as a free man. He laughed wryly at the thought. Free? Yet at least he was still a captive, not a slave. There was a vast difference between a captive and a slave, a revolting gulf in which, crossing, a man or woman's self-respect must be forever lost. Before and to one side of the block, the crowd had left a space clear, and there Abdel-Kafid sat his horse, amid a troop of black tigers, bizarre in their ceremonial armor. Ceremonial it must be, reflected Brent. It might turn a sword blade, but it would afford no protection against a bullet. But it was one of the many fantastic customs of this city, where tradition took the place of written law. The bodyguard of the Emir had always worn black armor. Therefore, they would always wear it. Muhammad az-Zahir commanded them. Brent did not see Ali Shah. Another custom was responsible for the presence of Abdel-Kafid, instead of sending a servant to buy the American for him. Not even the Emir could bid by proxy. As he climbed upon the block, Brent heard a cheer and saw Alafdal Khan and Shirkuh pushing through the throng on their horses. Behind them came 35 warriors, well armed and well mounted. The Waziri chief was plainly nervous, but Shirkuh strutted like a peacock, even on horseback, before the admiring gaze of the throng. At the ringing ovation given them, annoyance flitted across Abdel-Kafid's broad, pale face, and that expression was followed by a more sinister darkening that boded ill for the Waziri and his ally. The auction began abruptly and undramatically. The Sudozi began in a sing-song voice to narrate the desirable physical points of the prisoner when Abdel-Kafid cut him short and offered 50 rupees. 100, instantly yelled Shirkuh. Abdel-Kafid turned an irritated and menacing glare on him. Shirkuh grinned insolently, and the crowd hugged itself, sensing a conflict of the sort it loved. 300, snarled the Emir, meaning to squelch this irreverent vagabond without delay. 400, shouted Shirkuh. 1,000, cried Abdel-Kafid in a passion. 1,100. And Shirkuh deliberately laughed in the Emir's face, and the crowd laughed with him. Abdel-Kafid appeared at a disadvantage, for he was a bit confused at this unexpected opposition, and had lost his temper too easily. The fierce eyes of the crowd missed nothing of this, for it is on such points the wolf pack ceaselessly and pitilessly judges its leader. Their sympathy swung to the laughing, youthful stranger, sitting his horse with careless ease. In his way, Abdel-Kafid was miserly. He was willing to squander gold like water on a main objective, but it irked him exceedingly to pay an exorbitant price to attain a minor goal. He knew, every man in the crowd knew now, that Alafdal Khan was backing Shirkuh. Brent, studying the drama with the keen, understanding eyes of a gambler, realized that Abdel-Kafid had got off on the wrong foot. Shirkuh's bearing appealed to the crowd. They laughed at his sallies, which were salty and sparkling with all the age-old rivalry of the East, and they hissed covertly at the Emir, under cover of their neighbors. The excitement of the crowd was at white heat. Ferocity began to edge their yells. It was more than a bidding contest. It was the subtle play of two opposing wills, as hard and supple as tempered steel. Abdel-Kafid realized that if he withdrew now, his prestige would never recover from the blow. In his rage, he made his first mistake. "Let there be an end to this madness," he roared. "No white slave is worth this much. I declare the auction closed. I buy this dog for 60,000 rupees. Take him to my house, slave master." A roar of protest rose from the throng, and Shirkuh drove his horse alongside the block and leaped off to it, tossing his reins to a waziri. "Is this justice?" he shouted. "Is this done according to custom? Men of Rub al-Harami, I demand justice. I bid 61,000 rupees. I stand ready to bid more if necessary. When has the Emir been allowed to use his authority to rob a citizen and cheat the people? Nay, we be thieves. But shall we rob one another? Who is Abdel-Kafid to trample the customs of the city? If the customs are broken, what shall hold you together? Rub al-Harami lives only so long as the ancient traditions are observed. Will you let Abdel-Kafid destroy them? And you?" A cataract of straining human voices answered him. The crowd had become a myriad-fanged, flashing-eyed mass of hate. "Obey the customs," yelled Shirkuh, and the crowd took up the yell. "Obey the customs." It was the thunder of unrained seas, the roar of a storm wind ripping through icy passes. Blindly, men seized the slogan, yowling it under a forest of lean arms and clenched fists. Men go mad on the slogan. Conquerors have swept to empire, prophets to new world religions on a shouted phrase. All the men in the square were screaming it like a ritual now, rocking and tossing on their feet, fists clenched, froth on their lips. They no longer reasoned. They were a forest of blind human emotions, swayed by the storm wind of a shouted phrase that embodied passion and the urge to action. But as yet, the mob was only a blind, raging monster without a head. At this point, Abdel-Kafid tries to clear the square, and Shirkuh demands that Abdel-Kafid fight Alafdal Khan for the rule of the city. And the crowd goes along with it. Abdel-Kafid's eyes turned red. He was sure of his prowess with the sword, but this revolt against his authority enraged him to the point of insanity. This was the very center of his power. Here, like a spider, he had spun his webs. expecting attack on the fringes, but never here. Now he was caught off guard. Too many trusted henchmen were far afield. Others were scattered throughout the city, useless to him at the moment. His bodyguard was too small to defy the crowd. Mentally, he promised himself a feast of hangings and beheadings when he could bring back a sufficient force of men. In the meantime, he would settle Alafdal's ambitions permanently. Shirkuh laughed at him and stepped back, herding the slave masters and their captive to the back of the block. Alafdal Khan was scrambling to the platform, his tulwar in his hand. He was not fully straightened on the block when Abdelkafid was on him with the fury of a tornado. The crowd cried out, fearing that the Emr's whirlwind speed would envelop the powerful but slower chief. But it was this very swiftness that undid the Russian. In his wild fury to kill, Abdelkafid forgot judgment. The stroke he aimed at Alafdal's head would have decapitated an ox. But he began in mid-stride, and its violence threw his descending foot out of line. He stumbled. His blade cut thin air as Alafdal dodged, and then the Waziri's sword was through him. "Hail to Alafdal Khan, Emir of Rub el Harami," yelled Shirkuh, and the crowd thundered its response. "On your horse, man, quick," Shirkuh snarled in Alafdal's ear, thrusting him toward his steed, while seeming to bow toward it. The crowd was going mad with the senseless joy of a mob that sees its favorite elevated above them. "Dogs," thundered Shirkuh, "form ranks. Escort your new master to the palace for his title to be confirmed by the Council of Imams." They were moving unwillingly forward, afraid of the crowd, when a commotion interrupted the flow of events. Ali Shah and 40 armed horsemen came pushing their way through the crowd and halted beside the armored riders. The crowd bared its teeth, remembering the Ghilzais' feud with their new Emir. Yet there was iron in Ali Shah. He did not flinch, but the old indecision wavered in Alafdal's eyes at the sight of his foe. Shirkuh turned on Ali Shah with the swift suspicion of a tiger, but before anyone could speak, a wild figure dashed from among the Ghilzais and leaped on the block. It was the Shinwari Shirkuh had ridden down the day before. The man threw a lean arm out toward Shirkuh. "He is an imposter, brothers," he screamed. "I thought I knew him yesterday. An hour ago I remembered. He is no Kurd." Shirkuh shot the man through the body. "I swear by the blood of the Prophet, he is no Muslim. He is El Barak." A shudder passed over the crowd. "Obey the customs," came Ali Shah's sardonic voice in the unnatural stillness. "You killed your Emir of a small custom. There stands a man who has violated the greatest one, your enemy, El Barak." There was conviction in his voice, yet no one had really doubted the accusation of the dying Shinwari. The amazing revelation had struck them all dumb, Brent included, but only for an instant. The blind reaction of the crowd was as instantaneous as it had been before. The tense stillness snapped like a banjo string to a flood of sound. Down with the infidels! Death to El Barak! Death to Alaf al-Khan! A moment ago, he had been Emir of Rub al-Harami, with the crowd applauding him. Now, the same crowd was trying to tear him out of his saddle. So, that will end what I read today, and I hope you enjoyed it. As I said, I will be dissecting this a little more once I reach the end of this story, because there are several points I want to go over with you about this story. I thank you for listening. I appreciate it. If you have any comments or questions, suggestions, anything of that nature, please leave them in the comments. I would appreciate it. Have a good night. Thank you.